All right, the raid is out. We're gonna make these videos as short as possible. So I'm gonna do these in 4 parts, I think. 1 part for each boss. And in this video, I'll talk about the gear that we use to complete the raid, and then also just go over the first boss a little bit. So to start off, the builds, or the build, I should say. All you really have to worry about is damage. You want to have as much damage as possible. The 2 main things that you want to stack are weapon damage and damage to elites. Those are the 2 most important things. So that's going to mean that you probably want to go for something like Unstoppable Force on the chest piece, or you can go for Berserk as well. You want to get on the ropes if possible. I don't have it because my build is pretty shitty. I hadn't farmed before the update, so when the update came around, it changed up my whole build, and I just had to get stuff out of the stash and basically stack as much damage as possible, which means that I also have Devastating on my gloves and on my holster, which adds up. And then just a whole bunch of damage to elites talents on my remaining gear pieces. I've also got damage to elites on the mask, I've got weapon damage and headshot damage on the chest piece, and I have weapon damage on the backpack. And then I have a whole bunch of blue stats to make sure that Unstoppable Force is unlocked. So yeah, I'm only getting defensive stats to basically get my offensive buff. Basically, as much damage as possible. You're going to be fighting a lot of robot dogs in this raid, so I would say headshot damage isn't as important. This is the one mistake that we made. Everybody kind of had a similar DPS build, similar to what you're seeing on the screen right now. Some players may have ran it with the 2-piece Patriot for the 10% damage to armor, and others might have had some headshot damage, but this is pretty much what everybody was doing. Just as much weapon damage as possible, and that's it. And yeah, you're going to be fighting those robots, so the one mistake that we made, headshot damage isn't as important, so you can kind of neglect that and just try to go for base damage and damage to elites pretty much. For skills, you're going to need to switch up skills a little bit during fights. I would say Deflector Drone is pretty good in PvE, so try to run with that. And also the Revive Hive is really good because it means that if you go down, it most of the time revives you. And then your teammates don't have to come and get you, which allows you to play a lot more loose around the field. Just try to be a lot more greedy with getting more NPC kills without being too afraid to go down. Because even if you go down, you'll get revived yourself, which makes everything just so much easier. Allows everybody to just focus on DPS a lot more. So that's basically it for the builds. Nothing too complicated. Just stack damage. That's it. So let's talk about the first boss room, because this is where I guess people get stuck for the first time. If you first enter this room, you'll see 4 nodes or boxes or something. Not really sure what to call them, but these boxes, they have sort of a blue area around them. And as long as NPCs are in this area, the NPCs will be immune, which means that you cannot kill them. Now, how do you destroy these boxes or nodes? Well, it's very easy. You have 2 turrets in the room as well. You've got one on the right side as you enter, and then one on the left side in the far back. You gotta get on these turrets and shoot the boxes to remove the immunity. The immunity isn't permanently removed, so if you kill a box, I don't know the exact timing, but maybe after a minute it comes back online, so you gotta destroy it again. But yeah, nothing too complicated, right? So you've got a couple NPCs, you take out the boxes, you take out the NPCs, and then the boss spawns. He actually goes through the garage door, and he is immune as well, permanently. Even if he's not in an area, in one of those boxes, you cannot damage him. So the way that you kill him is pretty much the same way as that you kill the boxes. You get on the turret, and you gotta make sure that you hit the weak spot on his back. There's this big red box, just like with most of the elite bosses. And if you hit that, then he will sort of go down, he will kneel, he won't be able to move for a few seconds. And in that time span, you can actually damage him. So you basically have to repeat this over and over until he is dead. There is a catch though, because the boss will always target somebody. There's this little eye that somebody can have on top of him. It's a little red eye on the UI. You can see it on the group logos as well. You can see a little red icon there. And that means that the boss is focused on that person. And this is pretty key, because you have to lure the boss to one of those turrets, because the turrets have a pretty limited line of sight. They can't move too much to the left, and they can't move too much to the right. So the guy who is basically tagged by the boss has to lure the boss in front of one of the turrets. Then someone else get on the turret, kill the backpack, and then once the backpack is killed, everybody basically shoots at the boss and damages him. The boss will not be moving when he's kneeling like that, so it's always better to go for headshots. This is one of those situations or one of those boss encounters where having a lot of headshot damage is actually helpful. So if you have a build with a lot of headshot damage, you know, you could use it here. But I didn't, and I still did a reasonable amount of damage to him, so not necessary at all. Now there are a few more things you gotta watch out for. First of all, turrets can be disabled by the boss. The boss can actually walk up to a turret. If the guy that is tagged is on the turret or near the turret, the boss will walk towards that guy. And then the boss can actually kick down the turret and then permanently destroy it. If only one of the turrets gets permanently destroyed, then that's fine. It's going to make the encounter a little bit harder because you have to lure the boss to the same spot each time and kind of guide him around the room. Whereas if you just have the 2 turrets, you can kind of switch back and forth, and it gives you more room to walk around in, I guess. But if the boss actually kills the second turret, then that will result in a wipe. You will just get a black screen. It will say mission failed, and you'll have to start all over again because, well, obviously if both turrets are dead, you cannot kill the backpack anymore, and thus you will never be able to complete the encounter. The boss also has a passive healing mechanic. It's a little weak point on his chest, a little green weak point. Once that starts to glow, that means that the boss is getting some passive armor over time, so he will heal back up a little bit. This isn't really a big problem if you just have one guy to keep an eye on the boss to make sure that that thing doesn't activate, because the way to deactivate it is by simply shooting a couple of bullets with your gun at that weak point. But of course, if you let it get out of hand and don't pay attention to that, that means that you can actually end up with a boss that heals himself quite a bit over the course of, the boss fight. In the footage here, you can see that our boss is healing a little bit. He gets 1 or 2 ticks of healing, and then somebody is already on it to stop it, to shoot the chest, and then he heals no more. So you basically want to have somebody do that the whole time. I also did want to add that the shield generators can be prevented from coming back online. The nodes that we talked about earlier, the one that give the immunity to the NPCs, they come back online automatically, but you can prevent it by clicking the right laptops in the middle of the room. There's a big screen that will show what laptop you have to press, and then you press the laptop, and that will keep the shields down, I guess. But I felt that it's actually just easier to ignore that mechanic altogether and just focus on clearing the ads, basically, because all that does is prevent the shields from coming back online. But the shields aren't really a problem, because if the shields are back online, you can simply get back on the turret and destroy the shield with the turret. So it's not really necessary to do that. And instead of having a couple people dedicated to the middle of the room to try and watch which laptop they have to press, those players, they could be killing ads too, which means that you'll get shot at less, which means you'll have more room and more freedom and more time to focus on the boss, which then in turn makes the whole encounter easier. So you could use the laptops, I guess, but I found that it's not really necessary at all. But, do it any way you like. This is just from my personal experience, I guess. Other than that, though, this boss room, it has no curveballs. It's basically doing that thing over and over, and eventually he will die. It's basically a DPS check. I think every boss is basically a DPS check, pretty much. You're gonna need a lot of DPS for this raid, hence why we all just ran a full-on DPS build. I mean, we didn't know that the raid was gonna be like this, but what we did know is that skill builds still aren't very good. And yeah, you can stack a lot of armor. We actually had a sleepy room with an armor and a health build as well. But it's just like, maybe it's useful, but if you are just very tanky, you're just not gonna do a lot of damage. And you're just gonna sit there and not help the team out. So we decided, let's just all go damage and then see how that works out. Turns out, works out pretty well. That's the guide for the first boss though, and in the builds. I'll have a guide out for the second boss very, very soon. Gonna keep these videos as short as possible. So yeah, stay on the lookout for that. See you guys soon.